So in today's video, I am going to be giving my post-NFL free agency power rankings. Now, before we get into the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let's get right into the video. Coming in at number 10, I have the Miami Dolphins. I think the Miami Dolphins of a lot of teams have been making some very impressive moves this offseason, trying to get better, trying to improve after last year's season where they obviously lost 7 games in a row and then won 7 games in a row. And it really feels like that the Miami Dolphins are trying to go big. They traded for Tyreek Hill. They re-signed Emmanuel Ogbah, re-signed Mike Gesicki. They were able to sign a few running backs, Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds, and then they revamped and helped their offensive line getting a little bit better, signing Teron Armstead. And then they brought in Mike McDaniel as their head coach, and now they have just a loaded wide receiver room with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, and Cedric Wilson. So the Miami Dolphins, they're making huge moves this free agency period. I think they're putting up their team in a position to at least try to succeed now in that division, especially in the AFC conference. It's going to be a little bit tough, but based off the moves the Miami Dolphins have made so far this offseason, I really do think the Miami Dolphins are trying their best to be a very competitive team, and I think they're trying to make a push for the playoffs next season. Coming in at number 9, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, another team that is making some very, very impressive moves this offseason. Obviously, the biggest move is them trading for Devontae Adams from the Green Bay Packers. Now, that's a massive move for their offense. They have a legitimate number 1 wide receiver on their team to go along with Hunter Renfrow that played really well last year, and Darren Waller. So they have a good trio of wide receivers there, and Josh Jacobs, who's a very solid running back. They extended Max Crosby and signed Chandler Jones, so they have a very good pass rush to try to get to the quarterbacks that are in the AFC West, the loaded AFC West. They brought in Josh McDaniels as their head coach, so they have a good coach now who's gonna hopefully lead this team out of dysfunction, because you look at the Raiders in the past, for this past season, they were a dysfunctional team. All the issues that they have with John Gruden, Henry Ruggs, obviously everything that went on. So now you have a guy that can bring stability, has experience with stability, and this Raiders team is a team that nobody should sleep on. This is a team that could, after making the playoffs last year, they have a chance to take it to the next level. Coming in at number 8, we have the Denver Broncos. Now, they've only made one massive move, but in my opinion, that's the only move that the Denver Broncos had to make, because they were a quarterback away all of last season, and that is trading for Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. As I mentioned, they were a quarterback away all season long. They have a great defense. They have great young wide receivers. They have a solid offensive line. They have everything around. They had everything around them last year to succeed, but they could never get over that hump, because as Teddy Bridgewater is your quarterback, Drew Lock is your quarterback, and Vic Fangio as your head coach, that's not a good combination to succeed there, no matter how much talent that you have around them. But based off the moves that the Denver Broncos have made this offseason, I love every move that the Broncos have made. It's going to make for some entertaining AFC West games. And then you also have Nathaniel Hackett there, who's going to change the complexion of that team. They're going to go from a hardcore defensive team to a great offensive team, and they still have that talent that was there on those defenses that were so good. I thought they had a Super Bowl caliber defense last year, and that's how good I thought the Broncos were on defense. So now that you give them a legitimate quarterback with a great defense, great young wide receivers, I think the Denver Broncos are going to make a lot of noise this season in the AFC. Coming in at number 7, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they really haven't made much noise this offseason. They've been fairly quiet. Like, their biggest signing, in my opinion, is signing Charvarius Ward. He was a very good signing. San Francisco is going to love Charvarius Ward. He's a very, very good player. But they've just made it to the NFC Championship game. And so that's why the 49ers, that a team doesn't have to go big in free agency to elevate their status. They have a great defense. They have a great pass rush. They have a great offensive line. They have great offensive weapons. And they did all of that with Jimmy G, who nobody seems to like, nobody seems to trust. But in 2 years that he's been fully healthy in San Francisco, he's made it to 2 NFC Championship games along with the Super Bowl. So the 49ers are, when they're fully healthy, they're consistently a great team, a team that nobody really wants to play, because they'll just pound you into the ground with their run game with Deebo Samuel. They'll pick up any running back off the street and they will make them into a superstar. That's just a Kyle Shanahan offense. So when it comes to the 49ers, they're a team that honestly didn't need to make any massive moves because they have Debo, they have Brandon Ayuk, they have George Kittle. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan's still their head coach. They have pieces in place that I genuinely think that the 49ers have a chance that they could probably win their division because the 49ers, they didn't have to make any moves. They're just a really good football team. Coming in at number 6, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, here comes the hype for the Chargers every single offseason, and it's coming from a Chiefs fan this time, but I can't help but I love the Chargers, and I love their quarterback. Like, as much as when we're playing them, I despise the Chargers because they're the ones who I think give the Chiefs the most fits every time they play them. I gotta respect Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is a fantastic quarterback. And then you look at the big moves that they played. Their defense was a mess last year, especially down the stretch. Their defense really couldn't stop a single thing. But their defense got so much better. So much better. They got J.C. Jackson. They got Khalil Mack. So now they have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack going after the talented quarterbacks in the AFC West. And I still think they have a very good head coach. I mean, Brandon Staley is kind of unproven because you look at that decision that he made to call that timeout. That was a very baffling decision. I still think to this day that if Brandon Staley had it back, he probably would not have called that timeout, and he probably would have just let that game run down and end in a tie because they just replayed that game on NFL Network, and I'm still sitting there like, wow, he called a timeout. But the Chargers, they were so close last year to making the playoffs, and it wasn't the fault of their quarterback. Justin Herbert is, I think you could argue, in the elite status of quarterbacks. He's he's great. Justin Herbert is great, and he gets to keep Mike Williams. They extended him. And so I think the Chargers in a loaded AFC West, I don't know if they're the best team. They're not the best team in the AFC West because I don't want to buy too much into the hype that is the Chargers because we do it every single year. But the moves that the Chargers have made, and they got Sebastian Joseph Day, so their run defense is getting exponentially better. So they've made moves to make their team better. The only thing is can the Chargers not charger and outdo themselves and keep doing really dumb things? But as of right now, the Chargers, what they have on offense with extending Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, everything that they've done along with expanding and getting better on defense, the Chargers, I think if they stay grounded and don't do anything silly, they will be a very tough team to compete with. Coming in at number 5, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this might be a bit of a homer bias pick to put them so high, but at the same time, when it comes to free agency, you don't want to overreact too much because the games still have to be played. There still has to be on-field action. And what happens on paper isn't necessarily the death of a team, but it's not necessarily the biggest win for a team in the world. But you look at the Chiefs in their offseason, the biggest thing that they've really done is they've signed Juju Smith-Schuster, signed MVS, and they signed Justin Reed. Those are really their 3 big moves. And they haven't really done much other than that. They restructured Frank Clark's contract, and then they obviously lost Tyreek Hill. But this is the part where I don't want to overreact. When you have a team that has won their division 6 years in a row, every single year that Patrick Mahomes has been their quarterback, they've hosted the AFC Championship game. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. They've won a Super Bowl. And it's not just my homer bias. I feel like if another team did all of that, I think that they deserve their recognition. Yeah, this offseason, it's struggles. Like New England, they went through struggles when they were on their bit of a run. There's humps in the road that you have to get over all the time. And I think this is just one of those off seasons where the Chiefs have to do that. I think they have to understand that with Patrick Mahomes' contract, yes, he deserves every penny of it, but things like this are going to happen. You're going to lose elite level talent, but then you also are paying Patrick Mahomes to elevate the team. So you have to continue to draft well, and you have to continue to develop players around Patrick Mahomes. But then you still have Andy Reid as the head coach. Like, you have to remember, in free agency, yes, they get those huge names in the signing to make their team better, but you also have to understand who's still there. The Chiefs, they still have Travis Kelce. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid. They have that revamped offensive line that they built last year. So there's a lot of things that the Chiefs have going for them. And they have 12 draft picks. That's another thing. The Chiefs have a whole bunch of draft capital to play with. So they can they have enough draft capital and enough cap space that they still have enough time to make some big splashes. But the Chiefs right now, number five, I still think it's a fair spot to put them. I think they're still possibly the top team in the division, but in a division that has gotten very, very tough this offseason, they definitely still have a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a very tough season for the Chiefs coming up. Coming in at number 4, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I love everything the Bengals are doing because they had a fairly good defense last year. They have elite level weapons and they had an elite level quarterback. Yet the only thing that was really holding the Bengals back was an offensive line. But Joe Burrow, he finally gets that protection. I mean, last year he made it to the Super Bowl without any protection. Now just imagine what Joe Burrow is going to be able to do now that he has all the time in the world to make plays and throw. They were able to add Ted Karras, Alex Kappa. They were able to get La'el Collins from the Cowboys. So they're improving that offensive line dramatically. So all the plays Joe Burrow was making last year without any offensive line help, and them going big, I think is just going to improve the Cincinnati Bengals, because you look at what Jamar Chase was doing without Joe Burrow having any time. I'm expecting great things to happen from them, and that pick of them not going offensive line and taking Jamar Chase really seems to be working out very well for the Cincinnati Bengals. Coming in at number 3, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, obviously, they're a winner just because of the fact they got Tom Brady back. He unretired, and with Tom Brady unretiring, you get a whole bunch of guys back. They were able to re-sign Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette. They got Ryan Jensen back. They brought in Russell Gage, and I really don't see a reason why they don't make a deep playoff run. Like, you can just chalk them up to the NFC South right now because that division is hot garbage. They literally have zero competition. They literally just traded Matt Ryan out of the division, and so any resemblance of veteran presence in the NFC is completely gone. So I don't really see any competition within that division. They should easily make a deep playoff run. They still have a really good defense. Tom Brady, obviously at 45 years old. Last year, he arguably could have won MVP. He was playing so great. There is absolutely no reason that the Buccaneers shouldn't make the playoffs in a weak division, a very weak conference. And honestly, if the Buccaneers are in the Super Bowl next year, I would not be surprised. But this leads me to the current Super Bowl champions, Los Angeles Rams, at number 3. Now, the Rams, again, it feels like they've been fairly quiet. They extended Matthew Stafford to a long-term contract, and they got Allen Robinson. They may not make any big moves, but again, a team that just won the Super Bowl, obviously with the team around them, they know that they can win the big game when it matters. They have the best receiver in football in Cooper Kupp. You could argue, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, it seems like that kind of list can always change, fluctuate, but I digress. But Matthew Stafford last year proved himself. He can win the big game when he gets away from a dysfunctional organization. He leaves Detroit, and in his very first year, he wins the Super Bowl. And in a conference that, again, is very weak in the NFC, there's really no reason for the Rams to not at least make it back to the playoffs. Now, their division still is going to be kind of tough because you still have to play the 49ers. And we got to see if Kyler Murray can take that next step and elevate and continue to play great throughout an entire season instead of just the start of a season. But you look at the Rams, like right now, I have zero doubt that they're going to be back making another deep playoff run. They didn't need to make any of the flashy splash moves, but they were able to extend Matthew Stafford, sign Allen Robinson, so their offense looks like it's going to get better, and they still have a very good defense, and they have the best defensive player in football in Aaron Donald. Which leads me to my number 1 team in the NFL post free agency, and that is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills were 13 seconds away last year from going to the AFC Championship game. Now, they did end up losing to the Chiefs in that game, but man, the Buffalo Bills kind of won me over completely. Like, I'm not a fan of Buffalo. I'm still a Chiefs fan, but just what Josh Allen did in that game, just going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, just taking the blows. He was throwing haymakers himself. Everything that Buffalo did in that game, now their defense couldn't really get a stop, and they came in with the number 1 defense, but that's kind of what happens when you play Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. It's kind of what happens there. But again, 13 seconds away from the AFC Championship game. They added Von Miller. And again, I don't know if Von Miller is really that piece that can get them over the hump because he is a bit older. But he proved last year in Los Angeles that he still has what it takes to be a really good pass rusher. And I really do think last year they were good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. I really do. Like Josh Allen, what he was doing against New England, what he did against the Chiefs, like he had a perfect playoff run. It was just a really like the worst thing Josh Allen did was he didn't call the right side of the coin on the coin toss. Like that was like the worst thing they do. So I don't know if this gets them over the hump because their kryptonite seems to be the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. But I mean, I think right now, I think every fan of football who doubted Josh Allen, I mean, there's no reason to doubt him anymore. The dude was special in this past playoff run. The Buffalo Bills are a dangerous team. They're likely going to win their division. And in a tough AFC, they're going to be one of the toughest teams to play, not of just the AFC, but in the entire NFL. But those are my power rankings post NFL free agency. Give me your power rankings down below, and I'll see you in the next one.